I can hear
So,
you. I'm going to switch
oh,
off
good.
my
So,
mic now, and I suggest everybody else does too.
Scary Paterson from Weston, Jenny Kitchin, Weston School down in North Otago. Yeah, we're both fortunately at the same school have done a science scholarship. So Jenny did hers 6 months before mine, so she actually got a jump start on me doing all the stuff at school. I was still crawling around the bush, I reckon, in the century. So she was getting underway. So really indebted to initially got science, promoting science, Western School. Probably Jenny, this slideshow.
Sorry?
Sorry, can you hear
I'm
me?
just trying to get to, yeah, I'm trying to get
Gary,
to
we're having
my
a,
PowerPoint.
Gary, we're having a bit of a problem with sound quality. Jenny, you should be able to see share my screen on the
Yeah,
screen. Can you see that? And if you click on
yes,
the arrow to the right, it will
yeah.
then say share document, and you should be able to find your PowerPoint as a PDF on that share
Oh, share
document.
document.
Yeah. Can
Okay.
you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Gary, I'm having a bit of a problem hearing you. It may be that your
Oh,
connection's bad, or it may be that you need to speak up a little bit more. Okay?
okay. Yep. Uh,
How do I get this back?
is that any better? Okay, is that any better, Michael?
That sounds better to me, yes.
Okay,
Okay? Cool.
good. I won't go through what I just said because I'm not quite sure people may have heard, but perhaps just to show where Jenny and I are coming from, I'll let Jenny introduce the PowerPoint of our introduction.
Should I start on that now?
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so it's Jenny here. We've been talking a lot with the staff about hands-on science and the nature of science. And over the last year, we've been introducing the capabilities. In a primary school, you've got to encourage all the staff, because some of them haven't done a lot of science. So we're often starting from the foundation, really. But we have staff meetings and teacher-only days where we explore nature of science and discuss its capabilities. We found it's really important to give staff time to navigate the TKI site, because there's so much there, so many useful readings and so many useful activities that the staff need to be able to absorb these and realise what's available to them. And we've also been asking the staff how we can give the children lots of practice and ongoing learning opportunities so we can grow their capabilities. So I think now we've got this future focus in the teachers' minds. Well, we're working on it, wondering how we can build proactive futures for the children, so they're not just going to sit around and wait for life to come to them, but they're going to be proactive sort of citizens who get out there and face the challenges. Yeah, so what we're faced with is we want to teach them knowledge and skills in science with our hands-on lessons and the day-to-day lessons, but how do we help towards this future focus? And I think what we're trying to do is give the children lots of related activities, lots of related experiences that will build over time. It's really important that what we're doing in the new entrant room is carried on in my class and the year 6 with the 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds, so that they're encouraged to be curious, to observe really closely, and to ask questions. That's what our staff feel is really important, that children are able to ask questions in a creative sort of way. And the environment we're trying to provide is one that's going to give the children that freedom and opportunity to try things out, and again to ask questions. We want to give them time to think about things. We find that we can get very tied up with the experiment. We've got 25 kids in the class, perhaps with hot water and beakers, or with marbles rolling over the floor, or candles burning and hair getting singed. And somehow we've got to find time to slow it down so the children can step back and think about what's going on and reflect on what they see happening. That's probably the hardest thing. We want to have rich conversations with them, but you need time to do that. Yeah. See, in this photo here, we've got children dissolving. We're dissolving salt and we're dissolving sugar and raro. These are 6, 7-year-olds. It was important that the year before that, they'd had experiences in the new entrant room to do dissolving and talk about dissolving. And it's just building each year on what the children have been doing in previous years is going to be very important for us. Another vital part, I think, of growing our children so they're interested in their world and curious about their world and become proactive sort of citizens is to involve them with community-based projects. So in these photos here, on the left, we've got our visit to the wetlands this year. The local farmers came and talked to us and talked to the children about planting trees. So we planted trees as well as our pond study. And this is an ongoing project. We've been there before and we'll carry on helping the farmers at the wetlands here and also with their riparian planting on their farms. And on the right-hand side, we've got the Marine Metre Square project that we were helping with last year. That's that's New Zealand-wide, of course. And we had marine study folk from the university coming up to assist us with this. Our connection with scientists from outside the school is hugely important to wake the children up to what's going on out there in the wide world. Oh, hang on, go back one. Oh, this is a bit of a pet project of mine. This is building a skink garden. And I mean, this had really interesting developments because after we built the garden, we entered our little project into the Otago Conservation Awards last year. And we didn't get anywhere, but we were invited to the evening when the awards were presented. And it was amazing to meet all these high-flying Otago people who won the prizes and to see what they were doing around Otago. So hopefully some of our young people who came along would have been touched in some way, or certainly their interest might have been aroused when they see what's happening in Otago. And they made the point there at the Conservation Awards that we're looking for long-term projects that children can get involved with, like the skink garden, the wetlands, riparian planting. Down at Tahuna, they're looking at water quality. At Portobello, they're planting marram grass. So they're really involving the children with adults and people who have got a passion for the environment or for innovation. So, yeah, the question is, with all this hands-on science we're doing with the children and with the conversations we're trying to set up with the children within the classroom, although that is quite hard because the classrooms get so busy, we are faced with the question of how do we best measure progression? How do we assess the science that we're doing? And here I will pass over to Gary. You right, Gary?
Thanks, Jenny. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Oh, that's good. Right. What Jenny's shown us a brilliant photograph and talk is that we are, well, first of all, arousing the curiosity in the children at Weston and building on their capabilities. We like to sort of think the capabilities as dispositions, habits. That's what we're aiming the children over time, just to take on these scientific capabilities to the point where hopefully we don't have to coerce it out of them. It just becomes a habit. And there is a point, we hope, that whenever the children approach their science, that if they've got these capabilities or dispositions on board, it'll change the way they actually look at things. They should hopefully instinctively take an interest and just make observations without having adults coerce them, as I said, and hopefully these sort of habits, abilities they take on into adulthood, so that when they do get a challenge in science, that they have the questioning ability to respond to the challenge. So I'm here at Weston here. Well, this photograph, we decided to see if we could assess how they were taking on board these capabilities. So last year, or the last 2 Junes last year, we've been working on science that we've done at school, arousing curiosity and questioning. It was we were encouraging, promoting the capability of gathering and interpreting data, and we've carried that on into this year, and also introducing second capability, using the evidence focus. And we have given them kind of a practical test, if you like. We did it last year. We for observing and inferring, which is capability 1 basically. We had them do a couple of steps in floating paper clips on water, seeing what questions they can come up with. And we, a couple of pictures there, and we asked, what do you see? What do you observe, and what do you think? And we actually had them write it down here it is. Children actually wrote their responses down. Some children were having problems there. The teachers or teaching assistants did it for them based on what the children told them. And I used this matrix here to gather use the data and just assess where they were with their, how they were progressing with taking on board these capabilities of observing and thinking. And we just, using indicators, try to assess them at a level. And we're going to repeat this exercise or a similar one. Well, we did it with this experiment here where we were basically testing viscosity. We had dishwashing liquid and olive oil. And children were timing. We had a little weights, how long it took them to sink to the bottom of the test tube, and they come out with questions and inferences all based on that. We did consult Dale Anderson at Victoria University. She looked at what we've been doing and suggested some modifications. More of a suggestion that in our question we leave it open so that encourage the kids to come up with their own thinking. Here you got, how could you find out, how could you hear the two solutions. She suggested using the using evidence, capable to do that. We do activities around burning a candle. So it's basically what we're aiming for. So we're just coming up with a way to perhaps assess how these our children are taking on these capabilities, these dispositions. Just seeing if we are turning them into future little scientific citizens. Anything else there, Jenny? I've just come to the end of that slideshow.
Well, it was interesting, looking through the capabilities over the next few years. See how that goes.
Okay. Are you about there with what you were going to share with us? That was really interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, over to Sarah now.
So what I'll do is I'll hand over to Sarah. So if you two guys would like to mute your microphones, and then we'll ask Sarah to share her what she has to say to us, and then we can open it up for discussion and questions and other people to interject with their experiences and their thoughts and concerns. So Sarah, over to you. You should be able to, well, I'll stop sharing this slideshow and then you should be able to start yours. Okay, so I'm going to mute my...
Okay. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. It feels a bit weird now because I can't hear anyone, and I guess you can hear me. Cool, thank you.
Hearing you loud and clear.
There? Oh, good.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm Sarah Johns, and I finished up my fellowship last year, and so I'm back at school this year. And I guess what I'll do is I'll just talk about sort of where I'm at and sort of where I'm going with sort of thinking and sharing my ideas with my department and kind of figuring out where we go as a department, and I guess as myself as an individual teacher. So I guess when I came back from my teaching fellowship, and I'd done lots of thinking around these capabilities, developing capable students, not developing students to get through NCA level 1, and my thinking around how do our programs, how do they develop this, and how do we as teachers, how do we how do we explicitly talk to our students about developing these capabilities? So I guess it'd be fair to say that my department feel, oh, hold on, let's just see if I can go down. You know, initially sort of feel quite unsettled, I guess, about an introduction of these things called the science capabilities. And I guess the first few meetings, we spent quite a bit of time talking about how do these 5 capabilities of developing capable citizens, how do they align with the nature of science and these key competencies? Like, is this another thing? And so I guess when you look at them all together, you'll see how they align with each other quite nicely. And essentially, I feel that if we're teaching and developing these capabilities, we're actually involving the nature of science and certainly meeting the needs of developing and strengthening key competencies. So that was quite a nice, you know, quite gritty conversation to have. And so I guess as where I'm at and trying to encourage the way in which we teach our junior science program, our year 9 and 10 program, and think about doing things differently, I guess to move forward, it's tiny steps. So something I've been using with my classes, my year 9, 10, actually 11, 12 and 13 classes, is this ethical thinking framework. And you'll see it here and you can go for yourself and have a look on after this. And what I love about this ethical thinking framework is it actually provides a structured approach to explaining controversial issues that happen out there in terms of, for me, biology and science. It really helps to scaffold students' thinking in terms of how they approach some of these wicked issues that exist out there. And, you know, I'm talking to them, you know, life is not an essay. You don't write an essay, but what you do is you gather and you process data and information. That's what you do. And you gather evidence and you make sense of it and you validate where it comes from. And from there, you start to formulate opinions of your own, and better than that, you can justify. From there, you start to engage in real-world issues, science. And so for me, that is about developing and strengthening really good, active citizens, whether they go on to be a mother of 2 or a graphic designer or to go and study science. And so this ethical thinking tool I found is really, really cool. I guess what I've had to do, you know, building up to this is with my classes, like what are issues out there? What are some of our wicked problems that we are going to or are dealing with? What is ethical thinking? And how do we use it as a foundation for decision making? Decision making right down to, should I be vaccinated or will I vaccinate my children? So I guess my question to you guys listening is, so how will your classroom look and feel when you do this? Yep, this is an online tool which you can use to engage thinking and think about scaffolding the thinking of your students, but how will you then bring your kids and your students back into the classroom and actually engage a little bit further, get a little bit deeper, get a little bit messier? How do you set up a culture in your environment so that they can build and act and behave like they will in the wider world? So that's something I wanted to share with you. Something else I'd like to share with you, and it's along the same lines because it's on this biotech hub here, is the Futures Thinking Tool. So this Futures Thinking Tool, it's designed to help explore how society and environment may be shaped into the future. And I guess I love this because what's going to happen in terms of food? 2 wicked problems, those in the world that don't have enough food, and on the other side of that, those in the world that have too much, and all the implications that stem from those 2 really big issues. So what and where are we going to go with that, and what roles could we play in terms of being actively involved in that? Along with that, I use a consequence wheel and get kids to think about together. I mean, from this you can build debates, you can build letters that they write to people to sway, her decision makers. it's a foundation or a start point for much, much more in terms of what you might like to do in your classroom. So that's something else I'd like to share with you. And sort of once again, so this is an online tool, but you know, where would you go with it? How could you build it, grow it? How could you build a terms work in your year 9 class and call it futures thinking, and really let the students take ownership of it? And how can you challenge them to make recommendations, both at an individual level, maybe family, community, societal level, to make a difference. So I found this one here really, really interesting. One other thing, oopsie daisy, oops, I might just shrink that down, yep, okay. Another thing I'm thinking about with my classes and with my department is, okay, so we're trying to strengthen and build science capabilities, and this is just, you know, a small snippet for you, but how can I encourage my students to be reflective about their own learning? I'm being really explicit about what I'm trying to develop and how I move through that as a teacher in my role and the way I facilitate learning to develop some of these capabilities. But how do they know how they're going, and how do they know if they are building and strengthening these skills or these capabilities? And can they give evidence for that? And that alone in itself is actually being a capable, active, you know, individual that they're going to need to be able to do in that real world in terms of thinking about how that affects things. So this is a reflection sheet. It's just a snippet of one that I use throughout the term and throughout the year, and you'll see there that I've just got 2 little boxes exposed there: key competencies, research skills, but I've also got ability to use evidence or ability to critique evidence. How do I engage in science? How do I communicate science using scientific ideas? So that's something maybe you want to think about, and maybe think about how you could do things differently perhaps. One last thing I've got here is, so just a small thing again, but our kids live in a Google world and they are accessing information whenever they like. It's a need to know thing. And so how well do they do that, and how explicit am I at teaching them how to navigate the Google world where information is for free anytime, any place? So how can I teach them to actually really think about information that they are being bathed in and bombarded by, whether it's on the net or a book or Brian Smith said so? How do they make sense of it, evaluate it, validate it, so that, you know, they are really thinking about the information that they are then attempting to process and gather? So this here I actually got from Sharon Varco and Riccarton High. She shared this with me, and I've just done this with my year 9s, as I've written an essay on should we fortify foods, and just getting them to think about where they're getting their information from. And we're about to go in and do a debate about it, and think about how they're and where they're accessing information from. So I don't know, that's all I've got for you. I've got this little snippets here, and I'd really be interested in what you think, what questions you have. Mike?
Thanks so much, Sarah and Gary and Jenny. I'm really thrilled by both of your presentations. They were really good. I love the crap test. I will use that. I think I can use that with my children too in their university studies. It's great. Now, just wondering how we're going to move forward. What I suggest now is that we open it up to people to ask questions and to make suggestions and stuff. And I suggest the way that we can do this is for at the moment I've got everybody's microphones are enabled. I suggest that when you are talking, please have your microphone on, otherwise please mute it. And if someone else is speaking and you want to have a go, please use the little man with the hand up to raise your hand, like I'll show you, I'll do it for me now, and you should see that my hand has gone up there. There's a little person with a hand just by my name, and that will indicate to the person who's speaking that you want to have a go next. So without any further ado, I'd just like to kick off by asking Jenny and Gary, one of the things that you emphasized over and over was the importance of time, the importance of time to reflect, the importance of time for processing stuff, and so on and so forth. And I'm wondering about, in a busy primary school curriculum and with the demands of assessment and national standards and all these sorts of things, how do you find that, handling the time thing? So over to you, Jenny and Gary.
Well, as far as the teaching of science goes, we have science every Friday right through the school, and we have a rotational system going. So in the junior school, we have 3 teachers teaching in rotation over 3 weeks. So the children are getting a lot of science. But within the science lesson itself, we have to create time for the children to be able to stop and think and start asking questions. Because in the primary school, we ask the questions and the children become question answerers instead of question askers. So, yeah, we really want to be able to give the time to the children to stop and think and reflect, look for the evidence, not just race through experiments. Does that make
Thanks,
sense?
Jenny. Yeah, thank you. And opening it up to anybody else to ask questions who wants to jump in. Gary, do you want to go ahead? Anybody else got any questions that they'd like to type in, for example, if you guys don't want to ask verbally or you're having problems with your audio?
I'll say something again. I find that the children often come up with questions when they're outside of the classroom. Like we might be walking back from assembly. This happened the other day. And a little boy had a coin in his pocket, and as we went past this handrail, this metal handrail, he tapped it. And of course it made a really loud noise, which really surprised him. And he stopped and said, "Oh, what was that? Why did it make that noise?" And then he went on and said, "Hey, we could investigate that." So I think it's important that we are there to pick up in a primary school on these sort of questions. And certainly in the primary school we have that freedom to follow these questions and encourage them to ask more.
I think that's a really good point, Jenny. That's a teachable moment sort of thing. Yeah.
Mm. But the teachers in our school feel that to be reflective is so important. It's a sort of capability that we need to encourage in the children. To have that, and to have creativity that scientists need, you need out there in the world, you do need a bit of space to be creative.
I think that's one of the things that we find difficult in life generally. It's not just in science teaching and learning, but in life generally. Generally, people find it difficult to take time to reflect and to be human. Diane, do you want to say something? You say something, or do you want to type something? Type something. One of the things that came across both of you, I'm getting feedback. Sorry, it's putting me off my stroke. But one of the things that came over from both the folk from Weston and from Sarah was the passion and commitment you have for this whole capabilities process. Thank you so much for sharing that. Jenny, there's a question from Deanne.
Oh, yes.
Diane.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Well, it depends on the. Oh, I'm getting
Someone's
feedback
got their
too.
microphone on, and there's feedback happening. So, could everybody, Jenny, please?
Thank you. I think it depends on how confident those teachers are with teaching science. If they've been teaching science units with us from the last few years at Weston, then hopefully they've got enough to draw on. So when children come up with a question, we think, oh yes, I've got the resources for that. I can set up a unit. Otherwise, Gary and I are there to try and support them finding the resources. We have been doing a lot of work in our staff meetings with introducing different experiments. So hopefully that's given them a bit of confidence. But as a school, we are actually working quite hard on student voice and following the children's interests. Does that help?
It certainly helps me. I don't know about other people. I guess there's that perennial thing of, that's been going on for years, really, of teachers moving away from that font of all knowledge model and allowing unknowing and uncertainty and engaging in the joint exercise of learning and finding out and doing experiments, which I hope gets easier with practice, but it certainly can be scary to start with if you're wedded to the old model of teaching and learning.
Recently I've been talking with my colleagues about, and I guess it is different from primary to possibly secondary, just in terms of developmentally where they are and their ability to self-regulate to some degree. But lately I've been saying to my students, you don't need to go through me to learn, that actually you've been learning all your lives, and it's my job to facilitate, to provide an environment in which it can happen. In fact, the hardest person that should be working in this room is you guys, not me. My job is to have everything in place to let you fly. And so maybe, I know that there's an element of that definitely must exist in the primary school. It's just that confidence to let things go a little bit, perhaps.
Sarah, how do your colleagues feel as subject specialists when they are confronted with
Yeah, I think it's fair to say it is unsettling for some teachers, but at the same time, unsettled is okay because that means they're thinking about it. And I guess what I'm asking them to consider is where does that unsettled, where does that come from? And that the students, I get lots of conversation about, oh, this has just come round again. I've been teaching for so long, and these cycles come round, and I guess this may be so, but I guess, and maybe we've been in the game a long time, but the world that our students are going into does not resemble today. It doesn't resemble the world that we came from. So we really have to think about how we are preparing these young minds, these young people to cope in a world that is actually going to be very demanding in ways that we possibly can't even imagine right now. And so we try to think about that and unpack that and then move forward from there.
And what you're saying brings me back to the question that was one of the ones that was posed, and I'd be interested in everybody's observations on this. How and to what extent does the way we teach science promote the development of the capabilities? So any thoughts about that? We're getting lots of typing
Hey,
going on.
yeah, I was actually, Diane, maybe I'll answer your question. Says Sarah, could you see those tools being used in primary in any way? I guess, so my thinking, and this is with very little exposure to, a primary environment apart from my daughter, being a parent. Reflection is a really important skill, a thing to be able to do. And we're getting kids to reflect and think about what they see and what they observe and what would happen if, and to take risks and find out, or to infer and to predict and things. And I guess for me too is how can we teach students to be very conscious, to be cognitively present, although we're not going to use those words, but how can we get them to think about how they're learning? And so I'm looking here at this learner profile, how could we get kids or encourage students to be really, really reflective about their thinking? Maybe it's not a written sheet. Maybe it's an audio journal. Maybe it's a learning journal that is that they like a big brother. They step into a booth and they talk about what they learnt today, and they think about their next steps and things. So that's one example that I could think of, how maybe you could take this idea and mould it to something that might meet the needs of your kids.
Thanks, Sarah. That sounded really good.
Okay, I'm just on here, please.
Carrying on from what Sarah said, rather than writing things down, I think it's the rich conversations that we have with our children in the classroom that are so important too, to try and get them to reflect and to actually look at the evidence. Because in primary school, the children, they're rushing around doing these experiments and they don't always stop and really look for the evidence for what they're saying, what they're seeing. So it probably comes through the talking with them, rather than having a lot of written assessment.
Sorry, I've been changing around the layout
Sorry.
rather at random. That was by mistake.
Oh, Gary, there you are. Yeah.
Looks like we're getting a good discussion going in the chat. I'll see if I can make that big now. Is that easier for people to see?
Hey, guys, I'm gonna head off now. I'm gonna put my kids to bed. Are you there? Did you get that, Mike?
Who's that? Is that Sarah or Jenny?
That's Sarah. Yeah, it's Sarah.
Hey Sarah, look, thanks so much. Really appreciate your taking part in this. I've recorded it, and yeah, we'll draw it to a close now. Thanks a lot. And anybody who's hanging around, if you want to carry on talking with Jenny and Gary, I guess you two guys will still be on for a little bit. But thanks so much, Sarah. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Good night, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Good night.
Come on, honey pie. I'll just turn my microphone on.
Have we still got energy for a little bit longer, or how are we going, folks? Okay, so does everybody think that we've come to a conclusion? If so, I think we've lost quite a few participants. They've already gone home. Thank you very much to everybody for participating. And Gary and Jenny, really appreciate your input. Next time I'm driving down to Dunedin to visit our sons in at Otago, I'll try and pop in and see you guys. I really think I owe you. Be really nice to pop in and see you. All right.
Love to
so
see you.
thanks a lot. Okay. Well, thanks everybody, and we'll draw this to a close. And keep warm, everybody. Keep safe, and keep on with the good work with science in your schools. Well done. And I'm about to turn off the meeting, so I'll give it another 30 seconds and then I'll close it. Okay? Cheers.